Thank you, and the chair now recognizes Mr. Raskin for his 5 minutes.
Thank you much, Mr. Chairman. The stabilizing braces have evolved significantly from their original intended use, which was allowing disabled gun users to fire an AR-style pistol. Today's braces are largely used to exploit a loophole in the regulatory structure to allow owners to turn their weapons into short-barreled rifles, efficient weapons of war, without triggering traditional ATF oversight of this kind of weapon. But don't take my word for it. Take the word of the people who use these so-called wrist stabilizer braces. Please play the video if you would.
You see a gun like this and you're like, how the heck is a barrel with that length a pistol? Well, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about SB Tactical and their stabilizing braces. 4 pistols.
The end here, which is a rubber type of configuration. It's adjustable. If you want to run your arm through it and do so, you can, and tighten it down to your forearm, which of course is what the braces were originally intended for. However, with the ATF rulings now, you can occasionally accidentally fire in front of your shoulder.
And today on Sunday Gear Review, I want to talk to you about this SB Tactical HKPDW arm brace. It does help some people, right? So you can slide your arm through that and undo it and all that stuff. But we all know what these are actually used for, and nobody is wondering about that.
And we're going to just see, does it really feel like a stock, even though it's not a stock?
Back to this brace, it changes the game. Like I said, it gives you 4 points of contact with the occasional shoulder. Got it loaded up? Let's see the difference.
Now you've got a very shorty boy, right? So you can put this guy obviously in a briefcase if you wanted to, in a backpack.
Mr. Wilcox, why are short-barreled rifles more dangerous and strictly regulated than other kinds of firearms?
Short-barreled rifles are more easily concealable than long-barreled rifles, but have more destructive power than traditional handguns. For example, common ballistic vests worn by police protect against handgun ammunition, while rifle ammunition, like those fired by short-barreled rifles, can penetrate it.
And what's the difference between a short-barreled rifle and a firearm with a stabilizing brace, as we saw brandished in the video there, and as we see on the poster behind me?
When it comes to usability, I think next to none.
There really is no difference in the power and potential violence of the weapon, and there's very little difference in the weapon's design. Look, our colleagues know that gun violence is the leading cause of death among children in the United States of America today. They know that more people proportionately die of gun violence in America than in any other industrialized country on earth, whether we're talking about Canada or Germany or France, United Kingdom, Japan, Israel, you name it. They know that the states with the highest rates of firearm deaths are the ones with the weakest gun laws, and the states with the lowest levels of firearm deaths have the strongest gun laws. But they say that all of this chaos and destruction is just the necessary price we have to pay because of the Second Amendment. All those thousands of people gunned down at church, in school, at the Walmart, in parks and grocery stores are just the human sacrifice we've decided to pay as a society for our Second Amendment. My colleagues, this is a lie. Our colleagues advance a completely flawed theory of the Second Amendment, which leads them to oppose even reasonable common sense gun safety rules that the Supreme Court has approved and which the vast majority of Americans endorse. Our colleagues embrace what's called the insurrectionist theory of the Second Amendment. Our colleague, Mr. Gates, says the Second Amendment is, quote, about maintaining within the citizenry the ability to maintain an armed rebellion against the government if that becomes necessary. Our colleague, Chip Roy, says the Second Amendment was designed purposefully to empower the people to resist the force of tyranny used against them. And Congresswoman Boebert says the Second Amendment, quote, has nothing to do with hunting unless you're talking about hunting tyrants, maybe. Well, this theory is completely debunked and destroyed by the text of the Constitution itself and by Supreme Court precedent. And yet their theory of the Second Amendment is killing Americans. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union and suppress insurrections. and invasions. The Republican Guarantee Clause tells the U.S. Congress to guarantee a Republican form of government to the states and to protect them against domestic violence. There's 6 other provisions in the Constitution, including the Treason Clause, that debunk what they're saying. And we're going to have to get through their false notion of the Second Amendment in order to save human life. Thank you. I yield back.
This is recognized for 5 minutes.
This committee runs my pressure up, and I do come prepared to committee, and then there's always somebody from this side that does something ridiculous that throws me all the way off. So, oh Jesus. Okay, so this is where we're gonna start, Ms. Kaskin. First of all, let me apologize because that was uncalled for. So let me do what she would never do, which is to be an adult in this room or in this chamber. So let me start there. I'm also going to start with some nonsense that she was trying to spew, and unlike Ms. Boebert, I am legally trained, and I've passed a few bar exams, and I also legislated before I got here. So I do want to start with correcting the record a little bit, and if you want to add to that, please do. There was conversation about ATF, because my colleagues love to talk about their guns, baby. And I'm from Texas, so let me be clear. I also own firearms. Let me scream. Democrats own guns too. Let me make it clear. I own guns and I'm licensed to carry. That is a regulation. Regulations aren't necessarily bad. It didn't stop me from being able to get a gun. So we were talking about, or y'all were talking about the ATF, which I wasn't going there. I didn't plan to go there. But you know what? I honestly wish the ATF would run amok, because we know that seemingly the people that run this chamber don't have the courage to come up with one of the things we've heard is common sense regulations when it comes to guns. And to be clear, our Constitution, the Second Amendment, anticipates people having common sense. Unfortunately, we have not done that, and unfortunately, it has cost us lives. So when you were testifying a little bit earlier, you talked about unintended consequences and the fact that we are supposed to be able to anticipate that as lawmakers when we are writing laws. Unfortunately, not only have we ignored the unintended consequences, but we've got foreseeable consequences that are continually ignored. And that is why we are talking about regulation, at least on this side of the aisle. And our definition of common sense is one that doesn't keep us in the pockets of corporations, but keeps us in the pockets of the people. Because what I'm trying to do is save lives. My job isn't here to make sure that I'm pushing the bottom line for some corporation, but it's to make sure that the people that put me into this seat, which were actual people, individuals, to make sure that I can save lives. So let's talk about my state, because we always got good stuff coming out of Texas. Unfortunately, my state decided that it didn't want to be a part of the overall national grid, because my state did not want to deal with all of the quote-unquote red tape. The cost of that was lives. So we had this winter storm, and here it was, I was freshly being sworn into the Texas House, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do, because I started getting calls, because there is this thing called climate change. Hello, nobody's in the chamber on the other side. But climate change is this real thing. And so in Texas, we had this terrible storm that took place, and even though we are an energy capital, not just in this country, but in the world, for clean and dirty energy, unfortunately, we couldn't keep our own lights on, and it was all because they wanted to avoid red tape. You know what the cost of that was? It was human lives. And I think that that's what's being lost. You know what happened in Palestine or East Palestine? The cost was human lives. Unfortunately, seemingly, some people don't want to consider human lives as an actual cost. The only cost that they ever talk about is dollars. Well, let me be clear. I'm not here because of corporate dollars. I'm here because of people. And so I am curious to know, and I'm going to give you, and I usually run out of time. I'm going to be clear. I always run out of time because they always give me too much to do. But because of the way that you were treated, I am going to allow you the courtesy of expounding upon what it was that you were talking about with these agencies, which is pretty much what I understood, which is they only did what they were delegated to do, because if ATF could do more, I'm sure that we would actually get rid of the assault rifles that are constantly killing our babies every single day in this country. But go ahead, Ms. Kaskin, with the last 20 seconds.
Well, I appreciate your comments, and I thank you for them. And I don't disagree with anything that you said about the situation in Texas, where they declined to be part of the national pool and then suffered the consequences, which were real. And what I was trying to say earlier was that what the ATF has been doing is consistent with the authority that they had been granted by Congress, and to the extent they exceeded that authority in any way. This is the most litigious country in the world. Someone will take him to court, and if they really did the wrong thing, if they didn't stay within the constraints, the courts will so determine. I have complete confidence in that. But thank you again for your comments, ma'am.
Thank you so much, and with that, I'll yield.